On the way next, though, you may or may not have heard about ultimate bare-knuckle boxing. So you've seen the rise of MMA and UFC. Dublin has always had huge amounts of support and interest in boxing. But what are your thoughts about losing the gloves and going in face-to-face in a ring with nothing more than your fists, your thumbs taped down, apparently? The biggest event of its kind, the ultimate bare-knuckle fighting event, took place last week in Manchester. Huge. Thousands attended it. If you're into boxing, if you're into MMA, you'll be interested in hearing from one of the promoters, a gentleman by the name of Stu Armstrong. He's on the way next, and you'll hear about how, in the name of God, is this thing even legal? How dangerous is it? And is there much interest in ultimate bare-knuckle boxing? It's on the way next. Now, I don't know if you heard about this, but if you're into your boxing and you're into your MMA, maybe this will be the newest thing to come along. So, bare-knuckle boxing, ultimate bare-knuckle boxing. It's becoming, I want to say, more legitimate. It's actually a thing. And one of the promoters who did an event in front of 2,500 people there on Saturday over in Manchester, in one of their arenas over there, Stu Armstrong, is on the line. Stu, good evening, and welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. You're really welcome.
So, bare-knuckle boxing.
Yep.
What's been the story with bare-knuckle boxing for the last while?
So probably for about the last maybe 5 or 6 years, been slowly building in England, getting bigger and bigger. The company that I work for, owned by Sean Amanda Smith, Sean Smith himself, he's been heavily involved since sort of back in the day, as he was sort of the first bare-knuckle referee, and so he's the one with, with all the experience. And Ultimate Bare-Knuckle Boxing was set up about 3 or 4 years ago now. We have about 3 or 4 shows a year, and they just keep getting bigger and better. We're now into arenas.
An arena fight took place, or an event took place on Saturday. How many people were there watching?
It was 2,500 people. It was completely sold out at the arena.
So obviously this is starting to get serious traction. Would it be fair to say it's been kind of like underground for the last while?
I think it's been a very underground thing for a lot of years, and then as I sort of term it, modern day bare-knuckle boxing really started coming to the front over the last 4 or 5 years, something like that.
It sounds as if it should be like illegal, or is it regulated in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, so I get this a lot. It's fully legal, going back to the original days of boxing. The first recorded bout was bare-knuckle back in 1681. It was completely legal then, and it's never ever been made illegal. And a lot of people think, because there's no gloves, that it's illegal. So bare-knuckle boxing was always the sport. There was no rules at all in any kind of boxing,
right?
Up until Jack Broughton's London prize fight rules, which came in 1743. Then in 1867, the Marquis of Queensby, I think in the main, was trying to make some money as a fight promoter. He brought in gloves. 99% of people in the world will think gloves, padding makes the sport safer.
Yeah. How
wrong could you be? So the reason the gloves were brought in was to make bouts last longer and to make them a lot bloodier. There's main safety sort of aspects. Short term in bare-knuckle boxing, you may get a lot more broken noses, broken jaws, but there's no recorded fatalities, and the possibility of brain damage is far, far less in glove boxing. So when a fighter wears gloves, there's a number of reasons. They'll do a lot more headshots to their opponent. If, for example, put a cushion on your hand and sort of bang your hand on the wall and then do without the cushion, it'll hurt your hand a lot more. So within bare-knuckle boxing, there's a lot less headshots because it is quite easy for a fighter to actually break their hand.
Right.
So that's one thing. Boxing gloves as well, they distribute the force of the blow, so they make the blow actually bigger, and that rattles the brain around inside of the skull, which is the main cause of pugilistic dementia. Not hopping on too much, but if I'll just pull up some stats here because I knew it was coming on. Up until 1867, for 100 years preceding that, in America, there was no recorded deaths, and that was in the bare-knuckle days. Now, there's 2 to 3 recorded deaths a year through glove boxing, and it's estimated that 15% of all the boxers have got some kind of permanent brain damage. As you know, you hear the old term about being punch drunk.
Yeah.
The full term for that's pugilistic dementia, which can lead on to full dementia. Look at one of the greats, Muhammad Ali. That's how he developed Parkinson's disease.
You know, I've heard that before, in which, you know, it's the repeated banging of the head from the cushion, the glove, that does lead to, as I said, the swelling of the brain and stuff like that. But from a boxer's perspective, is it harder to have a career in that industry? Because, as you said, if you wind up breaking your hand, I imagine, or breaking a jaw, I imagine that's not a quick return to form or a quick return to the ring.
It's not. Broken hands can be quite common. I think the main thing that this fighter needs to remember is, although it's called bare knuckle boxing, they do actually wear bandage hand wraps. So it's the quality of these hand wraps that ultimately protect the tools of their trade, their fists.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is the way it's wrapped around the wrist. It supports the wrist and supports the hand. Also, you'll find that, you know, if you put your fist in front of you and sort of clench your fist as if you're going to hit someone, you hit them with a fully closed hand, where if you had a boxing glove on, your hand is partially open.
Right.
So that's also a thing that you'll see a lot of bare knuckle boxers, when they're, you know, getting ready to throw a punch, they've got that hand partially open, because it always has been, because they've been used to fighting with gloves.
Yeah.
And the knack of it is make sure to close the hand before the impact.
How much could do the top fighters in bare knuckle fighting, how much are they making, or could they make?
It all depends, to be honest, on, you know, on what the matchup would be and who they were fighting and what country they were fighting in. But it is, I mean, it's not millions, it's not hundreds of thousands, but it is some substantial amounts.
Are there any full-time professional bare knuckle boxers?
Yes, so we've got a couple in our promotion. Notably, we've got former 2-time world champion Knuckle from York. He is a permanent full-time professional bare knuckle boxer. He's a former ABA champion as well.
Some of the what did the boxing world make of this? So I just want to read you a quick comment here and get your opinion on it. So this is a gentleman by the name of Rob Smith. You may, I don't know if you know him, maybe you do, but he is the British boxing... Right, so you've crossed swords with him before.
Many a time.
All right, so no, I wanted to put this to you, because he, in this article on the Daily Mail, he's the General Secretary of the British Boxing Board of Control, and he has come out to say it's a cloudy area. He believes that the bare knuckle boxing is illegal, and that the police deal with it as a matter of public order. So obviously you know Rob Smith much better than I and what his opinions have been. But what do you make of that when he comes out and says it's a cloudy area and he believes it's illegal?
In a nutshell, it's factually incorrect. Right. So well in advance of when we're going to book a show, we plan them sort of 6, 7, 8 months in advance, and we always consult with the local police and the local council, and we do apply for a licence in the same way that you would if you're staging an MMA show or a professional boxing show. If it's licensed and the police agree to it, I don't see how it could be illegal. I think he does go on to say in that article that it's dealt with as a public order offence.
Yeah, he mentioned that.
Broken up by the police. Now, that would be the case if it was a bare knuckle boxing match that was held around the back of a pub or a back alley. That's a completely different sport altogether, one that we're not involved in.
Yeah.
So we've actually got exactly the same medical care as professional boxing. So we've got medics, fully trained and experienced medics by ringside. We've also got fully qualified doctor. And an ambulance on standby outside.
And I saw, I saw the last year in 2018 anyway, the United States had their first official license one in Wyoming, and Vice, the news outlet, did a very interesting documentary kind of following that around as well. And if you're listening to this right now and you're hearing bare knuckle boxing and you think it is just at the back of a pub, these events, as you said, they're in arenas, they're like any other boxing thing, it's just minus the gloves. But is it starting to take hold in the States as well? And is there any kind of world governing body?
So in America, it was actually illegal for quite a long time, since I think it was the late 1860s. It's been illegal since.
And you don't know why they banned it back then, do you?
I don't, and I've got a couple of friends in America who I know through bare knuckle boxing who have been instrumental in pushing this through, and from their inquiries, they can't find how or why or what the reason that it went on the statute books in America to be illegal.
Yeah.
So there has been a number of fights staged in the United States over the years, but they've all been sort of underground in these little dark garages and things.
Yeah.
And then just over a year ago, it was made legal first of all, on Native American reservation land in Wyoming, and then in Wyoming altogether. So there's 2 promotions currently running out there.
I suppose you're battling a public perception that this is a much more vicious sport than traditional boxing because of the lack of gloves. And some of the pictures, as I said, are looking at it from the various different fights. How long do the matches go on for?
Yeah, so all of the fights are for 3 2-minute rounds with a minute break in between each round, unless they're a championship fight, in which they're 5 2-minute rounds.
And do you get many knockouts?
We do. I mean, the show we had on Saturday, it can differ. We had 13 fights. We didn't have one single knockout. We had a few what we call technical knockouts.
Yeah.
The show before that, we had 2 knockouts. It all depends.
And was there any kind of broken jaws or hands or anything at that?
No, nothing that I'm aware of. And what we do, we sort of follow what we don't just put the fighters in to fight. They have a full medical with our medical team beforehand.
Right.
Crucially as well, which is something that the British Board of Boxing Control don't do, we do mandatory drug tests for every fighter, for every fight. But on top of that, we also do random drug tests. So, for example, a fighter may go for his medical, pass his drug test, and then decide to take some drugs before getting in the ring. We do have an example 2 years ago where one of the fighters was about to step in the ring, and they were randomly tested as they were about to step in, and that fight was stopped, and we don't deal with that fighter any longer.
All right, so he's cut, done and dusted.
Yep, so safety is really our main thing, and I think a lot of people think, we just throw 2 people in. Somebody's 18 stone, somebody's 12 stone. We relentlessly match on things like weight, age, height, their backgrounds, even if they haven't done any bare knuckle boxing before. We look into things like their glove boxing record, MMA record, general levels of fitness, even down to sort of height and age.
Yeah.
And that's what we really take time doing that, and it's something that we're passionate about, is the safety of the fighters. And with all combat sports, there is a risk, and I think our job as promoters is to mitigate that risk. And that's always our first concern.
Have you ever done a bare knuckle boxing fight, Stu?
No, I decided this long ago in my teens that I was going to be a boxer.
Right.
And I could have been world champion, apart from the fact that I can't box for eggs. I could have been like Mike Tyson, but I just can't box.
One small little thing in your way.
Exactly. So, I mean, I've been a glove boxing fan for years, and I remember being invited to a bare knuckle boxing match. And I'll never forget going up there with a friend of mine he's an ex-European pro champion, champion. And I was laughing in the corner with up saying, let's go and see what these are doing. And you know what? I fell in love with it in the first fight.
Where was that? Like back then, at your first bare knuckle fight, where was that held? Like, was that kind of an underground?
It was a small social club in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Right.
So I mean, there have been events, that have been around in the pub every now and again in the middle of fields and hay bales and things like that. That's something that sort of me personally, and there's no organisation, we would never have any involvement in.
Yeah.
It's a professional sport, and we don't do it any other way.
Stu, what was it that I suppose you fell in love with it, and why do you think it is growing in such popularity with so many thousands of people who paid money to go out to into an arena on Saturday and watch this?
I think, and I say this to a lot of people who are interested, go along to one show and you'll just fall in love with it. So if you're a fan of combat sports, it's faster. It's a more pure form of combat sports altogether. But there's this huge amount of respect between the fighters and also the fans that I've never seen the likes of in any other sport.
Right, okay. So is there any other events that you have planned this year then?
Yeah, we've got another event in July back at Bowlers Arena in Manchester again. And that is scheduled for the 9th of July.
Yeah, and do any of these get televised or get broadcast?
Yeah, so we have done some live streams in the past. At the moment, we've got sort of full media teams with multi-cameras and things like that. Yeah. They're all recorded and they go onto our YouTube channel, which is it's free to watch as well, which is Ubkb.
UBKB, perfect. Well, listen, Stu, thanks a million for popping on this evening. As I said, it's something that I didn't realise was kind of in a way legitimised and professional over there. Is that I hear bare knuckle boxing and I think, as you said, back alley in a car park somewhere, and lads just topless, drunken, like that, so kicking the shit out of each other. But no, it's interesting.
Just quickly, you should come over as a guest in Dublin, see what it's all about.
Oh, jeez, don't tempt me.
Come on, you know you want it.
9th of July, right? What day is that? It'll be a good old weekend trip.
It's a Saturday.
Saturday, I would, and I think Gav, who works in the show, will probably love that as well. He's in my ear now, kind of going, if I'm not going, he'll take the tickets anyway.
Let us know, and you can come as our guest.
That'd be great. Yeah, listen, Stu, thanks a million for popping on this evening again, and cheers for your time.
Brilliant, thanks very much.
No worries, thanks. On the way next, by the way, if you would like to take part in a little social